If you want a lasting, mature relationship, or if you're interested in improving your current relationship or marriage, stay with us. We'll talk with a nationally acclaimed psychologist about the 10 most important characteristics of a successful relationship. Let's take note with Saul Gordon, Professor Emeritus of Child and Family Studies at Syracuse University. Dr. Gordon is widely known for his work and lectures on sexuality, family studies, and relationships. He's author of Why Love Is Not Enough and How Can You Tell If You're Really in Love. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
As you say in the book, being in an adult relationship doesn't necessarily make it a mature one. What is the difference between a mature and an immature relationship?
Well, first of all, you can't tell the first few months, especially in the summer or when you're on vacation. They're exactly the same. But after a few months, something very, very dramatic happens. In a mature relationship is energizing. An immature relationship is exhausting. It's amazing how this operates all the time.
What makes one energizing and the other one exhausting?
Well, the maturity. There's a good relationship. For example, in an immature relationship, it's a hostile dependent. They can't stand to be with each other. They can't stand to be without each other.
Do you really love me kinds of
Yeah, well,
angst?
there's jealousy or anger or hostility or even abuse. I was on a show and the girl was being abused by her boyfriend. And I said, why do you stay with him? I love him. And I said, well, maybe you love him, but he doesn't even like you. So, and there's another characteristic that's very important. In a mature relationship, you have a tendency to be kind to people. In an immature relationship, you have a tendency to be mean. It's so pervasive. You start to lose your friends, you start to be unpleasant to your family, and so on. There's a kind of an anger and a hostility that operates in an immature relationship.
In your book, How Can You Tell If You're Really in Love, you define a successful relationship this way. You say, one in which after the passage of a considerable period of time, the partners can still say to each other, I like you.
Absolutely. And it's really surprising how compelling that is. You know, love is very volatile. It changes, you know. You so frequently read in Hollywood marriages, you know, they last usually 10 weeks the maximum. They're madly in love, and after a few weeks, they're just plain mad. They can't stand the sight of each other. They talk about chemistry. Chemistry is ridiculous. You know, they talk about things like love at first sight. I advise people to take another look. Or love is blind. I advise people to open up their eyes and see whom they're in love with. And people have absurd mythologies about love. You can only really fall in love once. My research says you can fall in love at least 18 times. After 18, it's a little difficult.
But most people, of course, are trying to find that one right
The
person.
soulmate.
But to establish a long-lasting and mature relationship. You say in the book that that one of the aspects of a mature relationship is respect and friendship, which you rank first.
Absolutely.
Sex, you say, ranks ninth. And in short, you recommend that people marry a good friend.
Well, basically, I encourage people to make friends first, because in an authentic friendship, there's an egalitarian relationship. You can't have a friendship where one tries to control the other, you see. And a friendship can easily emerge into love and marriage. If I was going to advise people before they make a commitment, I would suggest, don't say, am I really in love with this person? I would say, am I in relationships with this person? Does it enhance my own self-esteem and my own self-respect? That's a whole new dynamism. You'd be surprised.
Why then is sexual chemistry and sex so overrated in relationships?
Well, part of it is media. People love at first sight, and then they go right to bed together within days, you know, or even hours. You cannot judge a relationship by sex. You can have great sex, and the person can be an abuser. And you can have, one of the saddest things I hear about is young people who delay their sexual experience, wait until they first have, they're really in love with each other, care about each other, and then they have sex, and it doesn't work. He can't get it up, or whatever it is, and they just say, oh, that means we don't love each other. That is absurd. He's totally nervous, tension. She is upset. Give it a little time. It could be a good sign that they could continue. And slow, easy does it. the worst experience that a lot of teenagers have is that they have their first experience of sex and it doesn't work. And it means that they don't love each other. It doesn't mean that at all. And they can have great love, you know. A lot of the guys that have sex, you know, they get their orgasm 3 days later when they tell the guys about it, you know. Sex cannot make any decisions about a relationship.
No, of course.
I'm for love and I'm for sex, but not to make a decision about a relationship.
No, of course, you say that long-lasting relationships don't typically last if the partners are too young. You were talking about teenagers a moment ago, and you don't recommend people establishing long-lasting relationships.
Well, if they usually don't, but in a year, if they've known each other for years and years and years, why not? You know.
How can you tell if you're really in love?
Well, I really think the energy is the most important part, and kindness is very important. Also, you know, people have respect for each other. They don't have to do everything the same. The worst myth, and it's perpetrated by some religions, they say, two people become one. When two people become one, it's a disaster. Two people are always two. And there's a need for compromise, there's a need for respect for each other, for differences. Not everything has to be the same. People can have two different passionate interests. They can also have separate friends. Not everything has to be the same. The best relationships I know about are people who care about each other, respect each other, are able to deal with differences, but they still have separate, even friends and passionate interests.
And in fact, you say if you can't maintain a healthy same-sex relationship, in other words, if you don't maintain your girlfriends or your guy friends if you're a guy, chances are you won't be very successful at marriage.
Absolutely. People who give up their friendships, it's almost always a disaster. There's nothing more important than friends. The love that two people have for each other, the basic friendship they have for each other, that's key. But the next is friendship, and even almost as important as family.
We know that somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of first marriages fail. There are some 82 million adult Americans who are unmarried and unattached, and so it sounds as if Americans have a difficult time establishing long-lasting relationships. Why is that the case?
I'm going to say something that maybe people won't understand, but men are not catching up to what the real world is about. Women will not tolerate control, will not tolerate this amount of anger and hostility and jealousy, you know. Women have become more advanced, and they're more particular than the men have been. They still want a certain level of control. And then there are men who are also having difficulty making commitments because they haven't found an egalitarian relationship. This is what counts. Egalitarian relationship. And the most important element of an egalitarian relationship is respect for each other, trust.
Mm-hmm. And of course, that's not to say that women aren't jealous and possessive.
Of course. But they're
things.
More advanced now than the men are. They're not so readily available as they used to be. And also, do you know that 75% of all marriages were terminated by men 20 years ago? Now it's 75% by women. So there are changes.
You point out in your book that most people marry the wrong person,
Absolutely.
60 to 70%.
Yeah.
How can you tell if the person you love is the person with whom you ought to settle down?
Well, you better delay the decision and come to some terms. Find out what are elements that emerge in a year or two of a relationship. Jealousy is always hostile. I'm not talking about playful jealousy, you know. I'm talking about if you ever talk to that guy again, I'll kill you. That's hostile. Jealousy is invariably hostile. It has nothing to do with love. And if there's abuse, if people don't reveal basic things about their previous marriage, for example, they still have certain financial commitments and they don't reveal them, or they don't discuss why it is they got a divorce in the first place, you know. That's a central decision. What have they learned from that experience? And, you know, and also I'll tell you, you know, of the 10 most important things in a relationship, sense of humor is number 2. Without humor, No relationship works. My favorite philosopher says, wisdom is learning what to overlook. You have to overlook things. Not everything is important. You have to use a sense of humor and also use I messages instead of saying, you did this, you did that, you did that. Say, I feel badly, it worries me. Then there isn't attack, counterattack. Every relationship has some element of compromise. Every relationship has elements of some areas of disagreement. I mean, you have to decide what's really important and what's not. People don't talk. I've experienced a man and woman fall madly in love. And they go to Europe together, they have a wonderful time, great sex, everything's great. After a few, and they don't discuss anything. The only discussion they had was whom not to invite to the wedding. That's the only serious discussion they had. And then it's revealed that he has decided to take a job. They live in Pennsylvania. He decides to take a job in Florida because he has a great opportunity. She has, why did you tell me? I don't want to leave my family. We're not going. Divorce.
And of course, you outline in your book a number of conversations that premarital couples ought to engage in, as well as a number of activities that would be helpful.
Absolutely. The most important is to discuss their values. How can you even consider getting married if you don't discuss whether you want to have children or not, or even how many, or where you're going to live, or what kind of work you're going to do, or who's going to support who, or what's your is it expected the woman stay at home for several years, or can she work? There are basic discussions, and people don't talk about it.
But again, you say an egalitarian partnership is one that is more successful. With just a couple of seconds remaining, what final advice would you give to couples who are in a relationship that they'd like to improve, or who are looking for a healthy relationship?
Talk to each other. Even talk about sex. Talk about things that we have this sex, but it's getting a little boring. Let's just talk.
And on that note, we're out of time. Thanks so much for being with us. We've been talking with Saul Gordon, who is author of How Can You Tell If You're Really in Love? If you have story ideas for Take Note, we'd love to hear from you. Send them to Take Note, that's Wagner Annex, University Park, Pennsylvania, 16802. For Take Note, I'm Patty Satalia.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.